We know this because I was doing this before on the faculties of consciousness, and it is kind of important to repeat it, maybe in a little bit different fashion. Maybe I will start with something which you don't know. I jump forward. But I must cover this part. So Sri Aurobindo speaks on these Adhidaiva, Adhyatma, and Adhibhuta. There are three major, let us say, epistemologies or approaches to knowledge. One is when the senses or our faculties are turned without. We are looking without. Other is that we learn about ourselves within, and within the very faculties. And the other, we turn them totally within, yeah, in opposite direction. And we are looking for our innermost being. So we can turn either without or within, let us say, let us simplify. So this yellow in between is actually our faculties, our consciousness, our seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, all those faculties of consciousness or consciousness itself, which can be turned either without or within. We know this. So in Upanishads they say the wise man didn't look without, he looked within. Closing his eyes for without, he looked within, and he listened within. So you can go within with all the faculties and find your inner self. Yeah? Or you can look without and forget about your inner self. And that is the case. Whenever we look without, we don't remember who we are, why we are here for, what, or where we are coming from. We remember nothing. We are involved in without world. All our senses are turned without. So to know about ourselves, we have to close the gates outside and look within, either within or without. And it seems it's very difficult to combine both, or nearly impossible. Can you look within and without together? Or how would that be at all?
I think you have to at some point, Vladimir. I mean, if I can interrupt, it's like the yogi living in the cave, right? I mean, he attains a certain samadhi looking within, and then he goes to the market and gets in a fight. I mean, around people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mystery. I mean,
Yeah.
I
So
think
here
that
we have this dilemma with Radha and me, which I was mentioning. Radha says we have to go here. I say, no, we have to go here. And truly speaking, neither of these are the exclusive path. Yes, there has to be both for some reason. And very difficult to arrange this. We can be either perceptive of our inner self or active without. So the moment we become activated without, we become kind of deaf and blind towards within. It happens automatically. We don't need even to try. The moment you start doing something actively, you're engaged in that energy, in that flow, in that. So you don't know yourself anymore. You don't have that inner perception or the presence of the divine. So the karma yoga was one of those solutions given in the Gita, which we studied actually. So what he said that don't be engaged inwardly within for without reasons for the fruit of action. Don't make your determination inside for the fruit of action outside, because then you lose that even possibility of connecting within while acting. Yeah. So you have to keep that equality, equanimity, detachment, witness while acting. And if you can do that, so you can achieve through action, you will achieve the mukti, That means this will you will become aware of your innermost self in the action outside. Yeah. That is Gita's solution. The Upanishads have their own solution. Very interesting. Sri Aurobindo describes this in the Kena Upanishad. He says in the commentaries on Kena Upanishad, he says that the light of the inner reaches to the surface through this adhidaiva, through the faculties. Faculties are the bridge between inner self and outer self. You know? So the consciousness is the bridge. All our faculties, thinking, feeling, seeing, they are the bridges. But they are so involved in their self-satisfaction outside, they are looking for the divinity outside, you know, because they want to find the full satisfaction for themselves. That means they want to find the divine outside. That's how Mother explains why our senses are looking for their full self-satisfaction, because they believe that there must be the divine somewhere. That means the fullness of satisfaction should be there, Ananda. But unfortunately, that is not the case, not yet, at least. It will be in the future. So they have to renounce their self-satisfaction outside and become these faithful, mediators between the innermost and the surface. So they have to become pure channels. As Sri Aurobindo says, they have to become consciously passive to their own self-satisfaction and become receptive of the inner light. They have to allow the inner light to reach to the surface. They have to receive it and to allow it to act on the surface. Which is the case, because you may receive and then you don't allow it to act on the surface. You go again for your self-satisfaction. And that is the biggest disadvantage of this, because they are looking for the supreme anyhow. So for them, they forget that they have to stay consciously passive and not seeking, not to seek their own self-satisfaction. They have to allow the inner light to reach to the surface, and only then we know something of the surface. Only then they can be truly satisfied. They don't know that until, of course, when we receive the inspiration or the lightning or the knowledge which comes to us, aha moment, we are so happy, finally, it is there. In that moment of time, we are uplifted, we are illumined, but then it fades away. It is not staying. And Sri Aurobindo says these flashes, these lightnings of the inner, through these adhidaiva, through our faculties, comes once in a while. It comes once and then it doesn't come for a while. And we have to endure that kind of thing. So instead, we again come back to our seeking our self-satisfaction outside. So, well, it was a glimpse, okay, once, and now what? Should I really stay there waiting forever for another glimpse? So the senses are rushing to satisfy themselves again. And that thing blocks away the lightnings, the inner. So what is required that the senses stay consciously passive and receptive of the inner light for a longer time. And these lightnings start to come more often, Sri Aurobindo says. If they stay, if they don't go away into the surface again, these lightnings start to come more and more often until there will be a time that they will come all the time, like a golden rain, the full flood of the inner to the surface through them. They become, the faithful servants of the inner, of Brahman. So Brahman floods them and floods the surface. Everything on the surface becomes the touch, the knowledge, the word, the thought, the feeling of Brahman alone. So there will be nothing there on the surface which will not be Brahman. But that is the Vedantic yoga, notice. This is the Vedantic yoga. And maybe even Buddhism is close to it. This kind of managing, controlling senses. Why this controlling senses is so important? Because you have to keep them in that state of receptivity towards the inner light. And there is inner light. Once they receive it, they know how to receive it again. Only they have no patience to stay there and wait and call all the time. Yeah, makes sense. So here it's interesting, Adhyatma, Adhidaiva, Adhibhuta, on each of these levels consciousness operates. On the Adhyatmic level, Sri Aurobindo describes this as the operations or secret operations of consciousness. We will come to it. We spoke about this before, but I will come again. On the Adhidaiva level, we know them as mind, word, hearing, seeing, and on the Adhibhuta level, we know them as senses, Indriyas of Sankhya. Somewhere Sri Aurobindo speaks about these three. Here it is. In the ancient conception, it's on the Upanishads, in the ancient conception of the universe, our material existence is formed from 5 elemental states of matter: ethereal, aerial, fiery, liquid, and solid. Everything that has to do with our material existence is called the elemental, adhibhuta, literally concerning the becoming. In this material, there move non-material powers. So within this material 5 elements, there is something which is not of the same kind, manifesting through the mind force and life force that work upon matter, and these are called gods or devas. Everything that has to do with the working of non-material in us is called adhidaiva, that which pertains to the gods. Now this is interesting, that the gods in the Upanishads are our faculties. There are no other gods. It is seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking. These are the gods. These are the faculties of the universal Purusha. The Purusha who has the faculties and shares with us all the faculties. We all have seeing, we all have hearing, we all have the form of self-expression, word, we have the power of thinking, focusing consciousness. These are the universal faculties which we all inherit from him as individual beings. That's why we can see the same world and we can act in the same world in a coherent, meaningful fashion, because we have the same faculties. Otherwise, can you imagine, we will all have different faculties. We will see, hear, somebody will hear, somebody will see, and we will try to communicate how it would be. Quite difficult. And then, but above the non-material powers containing them, greater than they is the self, or spirit, Atman. And everything that has to do with this highest existence in us is called the spiritual Adhyatma. So, this is what these 3 levels represent. And so we can, from Adhidaiva, from our faculties, we can turn either without or within. And so I was describing the Vedantic yoga and the yoga of the Gita with regard to this scheme. So here they are. what is interesting how Sri Aurobindo describes the cognitive methods of nature in his The Knowledge by Identity, yes, chapter of Life Divine. Here it is. This description is really powerful. We will go deeper into it, a little, one step deeper than we did already. Our surface cognition, our limited and restricted mental way of looking at ourselves, at our inner movements, and at the world outside us, and its objects and happenings, is so constituted that it derives in different degrees from a fourfold order of knowledge. So within this scheme of Adhidaiva, Adhyatma, and Adhibhuta, we may have 4 grades of knowing, let us say, from the most superficial to the most fundamental. The original and fundamental way of knowing, native to the occult self in things, is the knowledge by identity. By the way, there is no other knowledge. Yeah? Knowledge by identity is the only knowledge we may have. So we have to identify ourselves with the object of sense. Otherwise, we would never know it. There's no other way of knowing. So I have to identify with the object of sense. This is knowledge. The rest is information, presentation, something else, but not knowledge. The second derivative is a knowledge by direct contact associated at its roots with a secret knowledge by identity or starting from it, but actually separated from its source and therefore powerful but incomplete in its cognition. So there is already a separation of the self from the object of knowing. There is a gap, as it were. If, let us say, if the original fundamental way is samadhi, full identity, full knowledge, then this would be already a gap between the object of sense and the subject knowing it. The third is the knowledge by separation from the object of observation and still with a direct contact as its support or even a partial identity. So even more separation. And the fourth is a completely separative knowledge, which relies on a machinery of indirect contact and knowledge by acquisition, which is yet, without being conscious of it, a rendering or bringing up of the contents of a pre-existent inner awareness and knowledge. So it's something like presentation, knowing as such without being involved. And it's amazing because this fourth one is actually the aim of creation. Not the first one, we may think the first one, because we are already embodied beings, we are looking for their identity, we are not looking for separation. But for the divine, this is the reason. The divine wanted to see himself in detail, to know himself in all these infinite varieties. So the fourth is a completely separative knowledge which relies on a machinery of indirect contact. Machinery of indirect contact. Interesting, indirect contact. Yeah? Still contact, but indirect. This is what Sri Aurobindo will call later prajnana. We will look into these 4. A knowledge by acquisition, which is yet, without being conscious of it, a rendering or bringing up of the contents of a pre-existent inner awareness and knowledge. Very complex definition, by the way. Requires dwelling.
Well, the word machinery interests me.
Well, it's mechanical, it's easy. Easy peasy, I'm joking. It's my first thought which comes to me. Machinery, yes, because it is something which exists by itself without you interfering. So it's kind of nature is doing it, yes, for you.
Or I would say grace would be my first go-to on it.
Oh, lovely. So nice of you. You just changed upside down. You made the lower the higher. So great. I agree with you. Grace would be good also. Word.
Vladimir, Shraddhalu mentioned something about the mechanical aspect of creation. And I was very perplexed. I was perplexed by that because that was something I wasn't expecting to hear. Is that perhaps what this fourth line is describing?
What did he mention about mechanical? Because it can be in many contexts used.
It was about the mechanical aspect of creation. I don't remember him saying any more than that, so it's vague in my mind. But I've had that in the back of my mind. It's something that I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Mechanical in this, Sri Aurobindo spells out without being conscious of it. This is mechanical. I am not aware of it, and it is happening anyhow.
So is physical creation like that?
It's something like unawareness of whatever creation. If I'm not aware of it, and it is happening, because it is happening, it is self-aware, but I am not. So for me, it is mechanical. It is happening regardless. I am not involved. So it is kind of going away from me, from my self-identity, knowledge by identity. So it moves totally away. So it's kind of the consciousness which operates in the world. The galaxies are moving, the world is living beyond. I'm sitting in front of the computer, but the whole world is still going on. So the mechanical means that I'm not aware of it directly. There is no direct contact. But indirect, interesting, a machinery of indirect contact. It is there still. Contact, but indirect with the whole world. I can re-establish contact any moment. I can stop doing this and I can go out and have another contact, looking at the stars and have a contact. I can re-establish contact, though it is a mechanical, it's going on. So this is how the world came into the manifestation. And this is the reason why the creation was made, for this fourth one, to live by itself, that every bit of the divine being will live by itself in its infinite varieties, independently, as it were. So it's not a small thing. We are looking at this last one as the worst one, and opposite. So we think that we deviate, but that deviation is the reason of creation. So
it's like on autopilot.
Yes, on autopilot, yes.
Going on without our help, without our knowledge. It's just going on.
Yes, because it has self-knowledge, self-awareness. So I don't need to be aware of it for it to live. It has its own self-awareness and knows how to do it. So there is a gap between me and that thing. And still, I can bring it any time and have knowledge of it by identity. So that can do with me and I can do with that. We have this opportunity to go deeper or to go more to the surface. So the surface is not something what we think of as a problem. It's rather the solution of some kind. So when we were speaking that when the Indriyas are turned without, looking for self-satisfaction, because they believe that the divine must be somewhere there, is exactly the same story, yes? By that, they are more and more projecting the inner values and powers to the surface, creating the worlds around and becoming more and more aware of them, or in partial way, in indirect contact, and still, it is the way to go. It is the way it was made.
Vladimir, is the state of Adhideva also where the veil exists between the inner and the outer? And the veil can be moved and we can step in, or we can drop the veil and move out.
Yeah, the veil is only in this where we direct our faculties, either outside or inside. That's what creates the separation. To remove the veil, we need to make them consciously passive, so to say. And that will remove the veil. By the way, I think this equanimity, equality, these are the qualities which were imposed to control the senses, because with that you will have a more transparent presence of the inner, while you're doing something outside.
So it is in the Adhideva stage?
It's an Adhideva, yes, that veil, or that...
Yeah.
Control of the senses is only in Adhideva. Adhyatma is already the innermost self. This is what we call the soul or Purusha in us. Yeah? Interestingly, if you look at this, I made it totally blank. What I wanted to say by this is that Adhibhuta and Adhyatma are one and the same self. And Adhideva in between the innermost and the outermost is actually which separates by the views on the inner and outer, but the same self. When we look at it from without directing the senses without, then we see the world in this separateness. But when we look within, we see the self in oneness. So it depends only on the point of view of consciousness, how we view the same self. Interesting, yeah? There is no other self here. There is only one self viewed differently, inwardly or outwardly, which creates the world of all the varieties. All right, I'm moving forward. So a knowledge by identity, a knowledge by intimate direct contact, a knowledge by separative direct contact, and wholly separated knowledge by indirect contact are the four cognitive methods of nature. Sri Aurobindo is so precise, yes? He is logical and at the same time spiritual. Amazing. So this scheme may help us also to view the same thing. So we can see the objective knowledge, or that knowledge by indirect contact, subjective knowledge, where senses are subjectively choosing where to go and what to do, is that the direct contact by separative direct contact. And finally, we have the intimate knowledge by direct contact, inner nature, inner knowledge, and finally knowledge by identity, self-knowledge. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Vladimir, one question here, please.
Yes.
So Vladimir, based on our previous discussions, I think the innermost is what you would call it Vidya. The other three are also Vidya, but partial Vidya.
Yeah, one can say so. Yeah. If you want to bring vidya and avidya, yes. Vidya is a total knowledge, knowledge by identity. Avidya is all other kind of levels of deviation from this full knowledge towards the partial and more partial and finally totally separative analytic and synthetic cognition of the thing which exists by itself mechanically without our consciousness even being part of it. Yeah, makes sense, this scheme. It's a very... There is another scheme of the same, and I put here Adhyatma, Adhidaiva, Adhibhuta, which also may help. And I think she was using it also for her sleep course or something. So on the Adhibhuta level, we have this outer mind, outer vital, outer physical. That means the senses, the faculties are turned without. Somewhere there is ego which is allowing them to work together. Kind of sense of personality, name and form, yes, and history, memory, which is cementing in them in one particular sense of personality. And there are Adhidaiva, inner mind, inner vital, inner physical, and there is subconscious also below somewhere. These inner ones are actually subliminal ones. Yeah? Subconscious is put in the separate section because it's very difficult to explain the subconscious mind, subconscious vital. So it is put into one category for all of them.
Vladimir, I mean, excuse the state of my mind at the moment, but so it seems like I'm into this yogic path or the spiritual path, and I'm kind of taught that you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you're the witness behind them. And then all of a sudden, at some point it shifts in, actually, everything's the mind. You know, and you've got manas, ahamkara, buddhi, purusha, prakriti, I mean, all of it. But it does seem to all lead back to just being the mind in some way. And I'm sure that's confusing.
We are using the mind, you know. We are using the mind to explain it, but not everything is the mind. There is also vital realm, there is physical, which is also having the mind in it, yes. So one can say everything is the mind, or one can say everything is the vital, or even physical, everything is physical. Because these three are interwoven. It's much more complex than just to decide what everything is. Yeah.
So it appears so. Thank you.
Sorry. Maybe you wanted to say something else and I just interrupted you with you. You were carried somewhere else and then I just stopped you in the middle way and didn't allow you to arrive at your point. But nevertheless, you come to it again. So here Adhidaiva, these inner realms, these, what do you call them? Universal mind, universal vital. It's not only our individual, it is something, the open realm for all what we receive, all our thoughts come from somewhere. All our feelings, all our emotions it's like contagious. We can be sick from somebody's emotions, come to us and trouble us. And we think, oh, it's my need, my feeling. Or even inner physical is there, yes, which is amazingly present somehow. So this is the Adhidaiva, and then Adhyatma, that's what Bill was saying about that I am not the mind, I am not the vital, but I am the Adhyatmic levels. That means I'm the self, I'm the witness, Atman. So Atman is projected in also three realms as mental self, vital self, and physical self. And interestingly, you can arrive at Atman through any three of them, even through the physical. Mother describes this, and it was for me a surprise. But that explains this scheme very well, because through the physical self, you can arrive at the divine self. It is there present in the same way as it is present in the mental self. It is the same self, only it is kind of dissected for the purpose of our mind to operate within it. That our mind could be kind of efficient with this knowledge. And there is psychic being behind them, the involved self. And the psychic, you see, in the center, in the heart, and on the surface, there is an ego. There's between them, there is this pure, direct lineage, so to say. This thing has to come to the front and remove this kind of artificial being with its presence and control the outer vital, outer mind and outer physical. There is more complex system of the same, if you want to go deeper into this, which is amazing, because I will leave it for you to meditate upon. There are more things here. And this is amazing because psychic here, you see, psychic can stay within Adhidaiva, Adhyatma, can stay within Adhidaiva and can go even to the Adhibhuta. You see how this is the Matthias scheme, and he made the psychic 3 different extensions. So our innermost being can come to the front, totally to the awakened state of consciousness, to the surface. All right, this I leave for you. You will get the PowerPoint so you can look into it. I guess we are coming to the end of the... I wanted to read a few more things, but maybe it will be an overload. Let us start next time from this, yeah? It's. I will send you the whole PowerPoint. You will read by yourself, and then we can discuss it even better. Okay? Sri Aurobindo speaks about limitations of our perception, and then something amazing, how things... He has an experience, and he puts it into the form which we may recognize. Really, it's a very helpful thing. In this case, I totally agree with Radhe that there is someone there who helps us to get that experience. Okay, I will stop here. So please, Bill, please finish your sentence if you still remember where you were heading at.
It's more still a question, Vladimir. So I will continue to just try to steady my own mind and keep it healthy and turn within when I can. And I bless you all and thank you very much. I don't have much more to say on it.
Okay.
It's a fascinating process, and
please don't hesitate. If I interrupted you, I'm sorry, because the thought was there and I just made it, shifted it or something.
no, it was a beautiful description today. Thank you.
My also dynamics, I'm not having these, is quite low. So when I talk, I don't hear you well. So maybe that's, and then I heard that your voice was still there, and I kind of apologize for this, that I didn't listen. But nevertheless, do you have any kind of remarks, thoughts on this vision of fourfold cognitive methods of nature? So in this case, we can have fourfold, yes? We can know on each of these levels, the most superficial, the less superficial, more inward, and finally by identity. There is a gradation of involvement of the inner being with the outer self.
These are also the 4 levels of consciousness, Vladimir. Would you say that? The external consciousness, as it moves inward step by step, there are 4 distinct phases that can they're not really distinct, they're all together, but then they can be separated and observed.
Yeah, I think so. You can distinguish the levels. If we take Yoga Sutras here, we could see that we start from outside, then we move to our subjective knowledge, or our subjective, we deal with our first niyama, then pranayama. We start fixing our indriyas, yes, withdrawing them from the outer surface to the inner. So when we arrive at the inner with our pratyahara, then we have a capacity of dharana, and finally through dhyana we arrive at samadhi.
Okay.
So the same process is described with different languages everywhere, because we have that nature.
Thank you.
It's all about actually our understanding of our nature. These schemes should help. They should not confuse. And we have to train ourselves to speak different languages. That not to be bewildered by the terms, because terms are only fingers pointing to the moon. We were discussing this the other day, that everything is a symbol. A finger pointing to the moon is a symbol, and the moon itself is a symbol. So symbol pointing to the symbol. And so what is real actually? The real is understanding, actually. Understanding of oneself through this process of pointing finger to the moon. How that all comes together with you. If you are not there, if the center is not there, there's nothing to know there. There is no knowledge as it is to be known if this is not involved. So some scientific people believe that there is knowledge outside this mechanical indirect contact, is there as a real knowledge, but they do not really know or do not want to acknowledge that actually with this surface there must be the innermost present at the same time. They just don't acknowledge it. But it is there. Otherwise it would not be possible to have that separated knowledge outside. And we will come to it. These are some jnana, vijnana, and prajnana, secret operations of consciousness, which actually make this possible. Yep. Robin is puzzled, doesn't speak. No? Robin. I'm kind of calling everyone a little to, otherwise everybody goes into deep meditation.
Somehow it looks very symbolic to me, like the behavior is Prithvi, Bhur, Bhuva, Swar, the inner being, the true being, the Swar.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. Bhur Bhuva Swaha. Actually, these are symbolic symbols or syllables which were made exactly to explain those things. Yeah? Bhuh is the earth, the outer consciousness. Bhuva is the inner. And Swar is heaven, actually.
Yeah.
But heaven in what sense? Yeah? So most probably inner knowledge, and there is beyond Turiya consciousness, the fourth one, which embraces all. Somehow we are beating around the same bush all the time. What we are doing, we are kind of defining different languages to be, familiar with different ways of talking about the reality. And also recognize it as real, not just languages. Because more languages we have, more it is kind of becoming real. If you have only one language, you can teach it philosophically without even being engaged. But if you have several languages, it kind of tells you something, because the differences are there, and those differences you can't reconcile other than having an experience. That's why it's so useful to have different languages explaining the same thing in different ways. Yes, Robin? No? All right, then we will close with mantra for today, and we'll continue from this beautiful quotation of Sri Aurobindo next time. Yes, Praveen, you have something to say? Or you okay?
I think this was very much what I was looking for, Vladimir. Thank you. I mean, I've had previously read about this. For example, the knowledge by identity, where Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedas, but still he wasn't satisfied. And then he went into supracognitive meditation, if you could call it. And through that, he accessed the Bhagavatam. So, and the author who was speaking about this also was describing that to be transpersonal authorship. I mean, going beyond the self and being united and identified with the divine, and then writing. And he calls that as transpersonal authorship. So I very much resonated with what you said today, the entire session, and its connection to Vyasadev's revealing Bhagavatam by, his supracognitive meditation. And also the scheme was very clearly presented, because I couldn't find in images, so that at least for our the mind could easily relate to the different things. So that was also very helpful, Vladimir. So I think for the first time in my life, I have come across where the very abstract concepts have been presented in more easily accessible way. So thanks for that. And also you spoke about the epistemology. So I'm very happy with today's session. Thank you so much.
You see, this is another language what you brought forward. Somebody's framing it transpersonal, cognition or something. You can build up your own kind of language around it, and it will be describing those processes, or at least kind of giving some kind of access to them, to our surface mind, to understand what is really happening within. Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. I'm glad that you found something, at least, because you were kind of disappointed with previous presentations. Good. Okay, I will close with mantra then. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om. Namaste. See you.
Thank you.
Yeah.